Gaming Bolt presents 16 games that are as hard as the Soulsborne games. The Dark Souls series, or more colloquially the Soulsborne series, is known for its extreme difficulty and micromanaging. But what if you wanted something different but similar at the same time? Well, these games are for you. Here are the 16 games to play if you're a fan of the Soulsborne series. Code Vein. Code Vein is a third-person action RPG that finds players assuming the role of a revenant. After stumbling into Vein, players are tasked to embark into the world with a companion picked from the various residents of Vein to uncover lost memories and to find an exit out of this new demented reality. The world of Code Vein is dangerous, full of vicious enemies and monstrous bosses to put players' combat skills to the test, Bandai Namco says of the game. The Surge. The Surge takes the Dark Souls formula to the near future. Equipped with an exosuit, players can decapitate enemies and loot specific body parts, as well as take on all manner of human enemies and machines, which is every bit as difficult as it sounds. This extra wrinkle of decapitation adds a layer of strategy to proceedings. It's much more exciting when you want a specific piece of gear and spend minutes trying to carefully remove it from your opponent. The sci-fi locale also sets it apart from other titles, making it even more unique. Aita. In Aita, you must wander through dank dungeons to find loot while hacking apart skeletons and any manner of beasts. The difficulty comes in the different types of enemies that attack you and the various means that you must undertake to defeat them. It may appear to be a fairly standard action RPG, but don't let the lackluster visuals fool you. The difficulty and depth of gameplay that await you underneath make up for the visuals in spades. Titan Souls. Titan Souls is all about taking down enormous beasts with nothing but a single arrow that can be drawn back to the player. Each boss can be defeated in a matter of shots, but they can crush you under their boots in a single step. The key is memorizing the attack patterns of each beast so that you can counter in turn, getting the perfect shot and taking them down swiftly. Dark Mouse. A top-down action game with a very minimalistic aesthetic, Dark Mouse looks like it may not offer much, but in reality it's a very thoughtful game with smart action and mechanics that take advantage of its graphical style, making it more than just a top-down Dark Souls. Your character also moves very fluidly, slipping and sliding around the screen. Not only do you have to master combat and other challenges, but moving your character in a way that they don't run straight into sword strikes. Nioh. Nioh is essentially Dark Souls set in Japan, with evil demons called yokai instead of fantasy creatures. It's just as tough and relies on well-timed dodges, plenty of rolling and mastery over your weaponry. The bosses pack quite a punch as well. The addition of stances switches things up. You must know when to use each stance to overpower your enemies, using their own strength against them. Death's Gambit. One way to make a game tough is by pitting players against throngs of enormous enemies. Death's Gambit does this in spades. The game's 2D design means there is less wiggle room against these beasts, and battle must be done with an incredible amount of thought. There are other enemies to fight as well to break up the momentum, but the bosses steal the show, with stellar designs that rival their difficulty. Necropolis. A mixture of tough-as-nails gameplay and dungeon crawling, Necropolis is essentially a Dark Souls game with a randomized element. Seeing the end of the title is nigh impossible, with twists, turns, and demons to combat. A lot of the game is spent wandering aimlessly through the desolate environments, but the sense of exploration and engaging combat more than make up for it. Castle in the Darkness. Castle in the Darkness is a classic 2D action platformer that throws increasingly difficult situations at the player and sees how they cope. It's all about using your weapons properly and being aware of your surroundings as enemies close in from every direction. Salt and Sanctuary. Salt and Sanctuary is essentially a 2D Dark Souls. The move to the second dimension means that platforming can now be included as an essential gameplay element. You can leap into battle, swiftly dodging attacks and leaping over devastating blows. The platforming also makes exploration much more dynamic. Levels are built with a level of verticality that has eluded the Souls-like genre. Shrouded in Sanity. Another isometric action RPG that wastes no time in throwing players into the thick of things. Shrouded in Sanity is a beautiful pixel art game that features very deliberate combat, where enemies will end you if you let your guard down even for a second. Hyper Light Drifter. Part Legend of Zelda, part Dark Souls, Hyper Light Drifter is unique thanks to its dash mechanic. Players can zip across levels, dodging incoming attacks and getting the jump on unsuspecting enemies. It isn't an easy game by any means, and simply dashing around won't do you any good. To succeed, you must be swift and vigilant, quickly picking off enemies and avoiding damage. Fury. Fury is a game that's all about taking on a series of increasingly difficult bosses. Each one floods the screen with projectiles, turning entire segments of the game into a bullet hell title. You will die repeatedly trying to take down all of the game's foes. It's a matter of memorizing patterns and reacting at precisely the right moment, which is often easier said than done. Ghost Song. This Metroidvania-style action platformer does not pull punches. The edges of the screen are shrouded in darkness, making it difficult to see what lies ahead of you. It's a fast-paced, thoughtful action game that challenges the player's platforming skills and dexterity. The game has gone through many iterations during its development, with the latest sporting a much sleeker visual style that makes it easier to see the environment around you, but still difficult to see what's approaching from the edge of the screen. Ashen. Ashen is an upcoming action RPG all about surviving in the face of insurmountable odds. Wandering through shadowy dungeons, fighting incredibly tough foes, and dying repeatedly at their hands is pretty much all you'll be doing. If you're a glutton for punishment, you won't mind though. Deviria, Heroes of Eternity. This isometric dungeon crawler is slow-moving, but tough as nails. There are a lot of stats to manage, and enemies are not pushovers, so you'll have to master dodging and blocking if you want to see the game in its entirety. Its slow-moving nature only adds to the difficulty, forcing the player to be very patient when confronting enemies. And that wraps it up. If you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing to our channel. We upload new videos daily, so make sure you don't miss them by subscribing. We appreciate your support, and we thank you for checking us out.